The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen are to meet in Brussels in the coming days. Significant differences remain following the latest talks between the two sides on a post-Brexit trade deal. Millions of people in the US state of California have been placed under a new coronavirus lockdown as cases surge across the country. There's a warning that hospitals are at risk of being overwhelmed. Venezuela's opposition leader, Juan Guaidó, tells the BBC he will not go into exile even after President Nicolas Maduro hailed a new dawn following a predictable triumph in polls boycotted by the opposition. And the legendary musician Bob Dylan has sold the publishing rights to his entire music back catalogue.
As Pfizer and AstraZeneca await approval for their COVID-19 vaccines from U.S. health regulators, the drug makers are asking India for emergency use authorization. India has been one of the worst-hit countries by the pandemic. The green light from health authorities there could jumpstart the global manufacturing process, as India is one of the world's biggest vaccine manufacturers. But the speed at which the vaccines have moved through development and testing continues to fuel public anxiety over their safety. A survey in 7 European countries last month showed that 40% of people are hesitant or unwilling to get a COVID-19 vaccine, and an October poll found that nearly a third of Japanese and almost half of French respondents said they would not get inoculated. Researchers say people may be more accepting of a vaccine if infection rates continue to rise and as more information on the vaccines comes out. And New York City reopened some of its public schools today, nearly 3 weeks after the nation's largest school districts stopped in-person instruction due to rising COVID-19 cases. Mayor Bill de Blasio said about 190,000 of the 335,000 students who chose in-person classes are eligible to resume instruction. They'll be tested for COVID-19 weekly.
We start here in Japan, where medical institutions are straining to cope with clustered infections. Group infections occurred at around 100 hospitals in November, more than 3 times as many as the previous month. 2 hospitals in the northern prefecture of Hokkaido have been hit with more than 180 infections each. The governor is set to ask the self-defense forces to send nurses to help alleviate the shortage of healthcare workers. The western prefecture of Osaka is also experiencing a medical care shortfall. The prefecture set up a new facility with 30 beds, all equipped with ventilators, to treat serious coronavirus cases. Governor Yoshimura Hirofumi says 80 nurses have been secured so far, but noted that this is not enough. He's also asking for SDF nurses to be sent in for reinforcement. A hospital in Hokkaido investigated how 16 people, including patients and nurses, became infected. The hospital says the cluster appears to have started with a patient who tested negative in a PCR test on admission. The patient was hospitalized with a different disease in late October and was discharged 2 days later. About 10 days later, 2 nurses who looked after the patient reported fever and upset stomach and tested positive for the virus.
We must assume that every patient may have contracted the virus the day before taking a PCR test. And we should treat our patients on the assumption that they may show COVID-19 symptoms any time until about 2 weeks after contracting the virus.
A clustered infection on a remote island is pushing medical workers in southern Hokkaido to the brink. 53 people, or about 2% of the population of Okushiri Island, have been infected. Many of the infected people were sent to a hospital in the town of Esashi on the main island of Hokkaido, but the hospital says its beds are almost full. Some of the patients from the island were sent to hospitals in Hakodate City and elsewhere, straining the entire area.
We can still accept some more patients, but if infection clusters occur in Hakodate or other places, the number of cases will surge and could cause a panic.
More than 1,500 new cases were reported across Japan on Monday. Over 165,000 people have tested positive in the country since the pandemic began. More than 2,400 people have died. With daily cases topping 600 in South Korea, the government is further tightening social distancing measures to curb the spread of infections in Seoul and surrounding areas. Nationwide numbers are back to the levels they were in March, rebounding from fewer than 100 new cases early last month. The government announced that restrictions will be imposed for 3 weeks from Tuesday. The maximum number of people allowed for meetings and other events is to be cut by half to fewer than 50. Large supermarkets and movie theaters will be required to close at 9 p.m. Prime Minister Chung Se-kyung is calling for the public's cooperation, saying the current crisis must be overcome before lives can return to normal. Public health authorities in Taiwan have slapped a stiff fine on a foreign worker who left his hotel room for 8 seconds during his mandatory 14-day quarantine. Security camera footage from the hotel in Kaohsiung shows the man stepping out briefly into the hallway. The authorities say the worker from the Philippines left his room without permission last month. They say he went to give something to his friend across the hall. Public health officials say he knew he wasn't allowed to leave his room. They fined him about $3,600. Taiwan imposes a 2-week quarantine on travelers from abroad, including its citizens. Penalties have been given to people who breached quarantine rules in 19 cases in the southern city of Kaohsiung alone since last month. Taiwanese authorities say no new domestic cases of coronavirus infection have been confirmed for nearly 8 months, but cases among travelers from abroad are on the rise. Turning to Indonesia, where a cabinet minister is accused of taking over $1 million in bribes related to a government program that distributes food to people struggling due to the pandemic. Social Affairs Minister Juliari Batubara turned himself into anti-corruption authorities on Sunday. The case involves Batubara's dealings with 2 food suppliers that secured government contracts. The companies were allegedly asked to give Batubara about 70 cents for each parcel they distributed to the needy. Batubara is the second cabinet member arrested for taking kickbacks in less than 2 weeks. Observers say the incidents could cast doubt on President Joko Widodo's pledge to root out corruption, but Widodo maintains such acts will not be tolerated.
Saya tidak akan melindungi.
I will not protect those who are involved in corruption, and we believe that the Corruption Eradication Commission works in a transparent and professional manner. The government will consistently support efforts to eradicate corruption.
According to Johns Hopkins University, a total of about 570,000 coronavirus infection cases have been confirmed in Indonesia. Over 17,000 people have died. The battle for Hong Kong's future continued Monday with police arresting 8 people in connection with an unauthorized rally. 3 were detained under the new national security law imposed on the territory by Beijing. Police say the 8 joined an illegal rally at the Chinese University of Hong Kong last month. Those detained include district councilors and high school students. 3 of them are suspected of shouting secessionist slogans. The university decided to hold its graduation ceremony online this year to prevent coronavirus infections, but nearly 100 people turned up at the campus. The university reported the rally to the police, and officers entered the campus to investigate. Police have applied the security law a number of times since it came into force in June, arresting people for chanting slogans or displaying flags calling for independence. South Korean President Moon Jae-in apologized on Monday for what he called confusion in domestic political affairs stemming from efforts to reform key institutions, particularly the State Prosecutor's Service. Moon has pledged changes in the office, saying South Korea is faced with a chance to bring about systematic reform of the nation's powerful institutions. He stressed that reform of these institutions is one of the nation's biggest remaining tasks. Moon's comments come as Prosecutor General Yoon Suk-yeol has been at odds with Justice Minister Cho Chu-mie. His approval rating has fallen below 40%, matching a record low. Prosecutors have launched investigations into the presidential office, one of which involves a close associate of Moon's. Chu, who's in charge of reforming the prosecution, sought to penalize Yoon for allegedly obstructing the investigations. The Justice Ministry will convene a disciplinary panel on Thursday. Major South Korean media outlets have reported on the possibility that Yoon will be dismissed before completing his term in July. Yoon has in turn filed a complaint with the Constitutional Court, calling the disciplinary panel unconstitutional. Another outbreak is hitting the globe, spreading from Europe to Asia, but it's affecting poultry rather than humans. And as a result of the avian flu, Japanese authorities say more than 2 million chickens will be slaughtered, the largest ever in a single season. On Monday, officials in the western prefecture of Hiroshima started culling over 130,000 chickens after detecting the H5 strain of bird flu at a poultry farm. They're banning the transportation of chickens and eggs around the area. The virus is believed to have been carried by migratory birds that fly to Japan from Siberia to spend the winter. Their droppings contain large amounts of viruses that then spread infection. Since October, bird flu has spread to 13 countries, including Germany, the Netherlands, Israel, and South Korea. In Japan, the first case was confirmed last month in the western prefecture of Kagawa. Now, outbreaks have spread to over a dozen chicken farms in 6 prefectures. Officials say there have been no reports of people contracting the bird flu virus from eating either chickens or eggs in Japan. Noda Kyoteru runs a poultry farm in the western city of Miyazaki. He says the coronavirus had already forced him to limit the number of chickens he raises by half. And now the avian flu has slashed 30% of orders he received from restaurants and other businesses.
I'm worried about migratory birds flying over the nets. If their droppings contain the virus, I have to cull all my chickens.
With the number of migratory birds in Japan peaking around next month, experts are calling for stepped-up measures to protect against the flu. Scientists in Japan are waiting to see what's inside a capsule the Hayabusa 2 probe has brought back from its journey to an asteroid. The capsule is due to arrive in Japan Tuesday morning after it was retrieved in Australia. Japan's space agency JAXA says the capsule is in perfect condition after traveling 6 years and more than 5 billion kilometers.
By analyzing samples, we hope we'll be able to conduct comprehensive scientific experiments. First and foremost, I'm looking forward to opening the capsule.
Hayabusa 2 made 2 successful touchdowns on an asteroid called Ryugu to take samples. Experts hope that by analyzing particles from the asteroid, they can find clues about how the solar system was formed, as well as the origin of water and life on Earth.